she said. You're just a kid. But that night, she learned otherwise. I still hear her voice when the room goes quiet. Low, steady, almost amused. You're just a kid. She said it like a fact, like the story ended there. But the way her eyes lingered a second too long betrayed her. It wasn't dismissal. It was defense. I met her in the most ordinary place, the back room of a bookstore where I worked nights. She wasn't supposed to stay long, just picking up something on hold. But she leaned against the counter, flipping through the spine-cracked poetry like she had nowhere better to be. I kept rearranging shelves, pretending not to watch the way she touched the pages, slow, deliberate, like the poems belonged to her already. I didn't know what to say. 24 and still clumsy with words, especially around someone like her. She had that polished calm of someone who had lived a life, not perfect, not untouched, but full. Lines at the corners of her mouth, tired elegance in the way she carried herself. She looked like every choice she ever made had a weight she'd stopped trying to shake. When I finally spoke, my voice cracked on something stupid. You always read the last page first? Her eyes lifted. Amused, maybe? But there was that pause, the one that tells you someone's measuring what to give you, what to hold back. I've read enough to know how most things end, she said. Then softer. Disappointingly. I laughed too loud, too eager. She closed the book and placed it on the counter. That's when she said it. The line that should have stopped me cold. You're just a kid. I should have nodded, bagged her book, and let her go. Instead, I froze. My chest tightened like she'd seen straight through me. I wasn't sure if she meant my age, my awkwardness, or the fact that I looked at her too long, too openly. She didn't leave right away. She tapped her fingers against the wood counter, a slow rhythm. The bookstore was empty, too quiet, the hum of the ceiling fan the only sound between us. Her eyes flicked to the door like she should go, but her body didn't move. And me, I stood there with my hands shoved into my pockets, fighting the urge to fill the silence. My throat burned with words I didn't know how to shape. When she finally walked out, the bell above the door gave a sharp little ring that felt like a break in something. I told myself I wouldn't think about it again. But that night, lying in my small apartment, the image of her fingers trailing across that book wouldn't leave me. The next evening, she was back. Not for a pickup this time. She wandered the aisles like someone searching for something they couldn't name. She stopped by the poetry again. I stepped closer, but not too close. You came back, I said, trying not to sound like I'd been waiting. Don't flatter yourself. She didn't look at me, just traced the spines. Then quieter. I just couldn't sleep. The way she said it, almost a confession, stuck under my skin. I wanted to ask why. I wanted to ask what kept her awake. But I didn't. I just stood there, caught between fear of saying too much and fear of letting the moment slip. The clock ticked too loudly. She pulled out a book, opened it, then closed it again without reading. Her hand brushed mine as she set it back on the shelf. Neither of us moved. And that's how it began, not with a kiss, not with a grand confession, but with silence heavy enough to make my heart race. She started coming in more often. Not every night, just enough that I stopped believing in coincidence. Always later in the evening, always when the store was nearly empty. The second week, I caught myself anticipating her, straightening shelves, glancing at the clock like her arrival might be scheduled. I hated how transparent it felt, how much I noticed the absences when she didn't show. One night, she leaned against the counter again, arms crossed, hair pulled back but loose strands falling around her face. I wanted to say something bold, something that might make her stay longer. Instead, I asked, "Rough day?" She smirked like she knew I was prying, but she answered anyway. "Most days are rough. You learn to stop expecting anything else." Her tone was casual, but her fingers told another story, restless, twisting the edge of her sleeve. I didn't push. I just let the silence hold. Eventually, she looked at me, her expression softer. "You remind me of before. A long time ago." I wanted to ask what she meant. But the way her voice dipped at the end, almost breaking, warned me not to. That night, I lay awake thinking about it. Before. Before what? Before marriage? Before divorce? Before years that weighed on her shoulders? 2 nights later, she told me. Not everything, but enough. She was married once, for nearly 2 decades. No kids. We tried, she said, her eyes fixed on the floor. But it never happened. And then one day, either did we. I didn't know what to say. My throat tightened, and I hated how small my words sounded. I'm sorry. She gave a half smile, as if pity was the last thing she wanted. Don't be. It was years ago. But it leaves you quieter. You learn to live with silence. Her honesty made me bold, at least for a moment. Is that why you come here? The silence? Her eyes flicked to mine. Something unspoken passed between us, and then, just as quickly, she pulled away. I come for the books, she said, though she hadn't bought one in weeks. The attraction was becoming impossible to ignore. I tried to hide it, pretending to rearrange shelves while really watching the way she tucked her hair behind her ear, the curve of her hand resting against the counter, the way her perfume lingered after she left. But I wasn't subtle. Once, she caught me staring. I looked away too fast, fumbling with a stack of paperbacks. Her voice came, low and amused. Careful. People might think you're interested. Heat rushed to my face. And what if I was? I asked too quickly. She tilted her head, studying me. Her lips parted like she might answer, then she stepped back, creating a space between us that felt wider than it was. You're too young to know what you want. The words stung, though she said them gently. Still, she didn't leave. She lingered in that half-distance, close enough that her breath brushed against my shoulder when she leaned to pick up a book. The hair on my arm stood on end. Another night, I was locking up when she appeared at the door, a little breathless like she'd hurried. Your clothes, I said, though I didn't move to lock it. She hesitated, then asked, Can I just sit a minute? I nodded, pulling the door open wider. She slipped in, her coat damp from the drizzle outside. She sat on the edge of a chair near the counter, eyes closed, like the weight of the day had finally caught her. I stood there, unsure what to do with my hands. After a moment, I set a mug of tea in front of her, from the break room, weak and lukewarm, but it was something. Her eyes opened, surprised. Thank you? When she reached for the cup, her fingers brushed mine. Just a second too long. Neither of us moved right away. Her hand was warm, steady. Mine trembled before I pulled back. She noticed. Her lips curved, faint but undeniable. And then, silence again. Not the heavy, aching kind she'd spoken of. This was different. This silence was alive, charged, stretching between us like a thread that neither of us dared cut. The rain had turned steady by the time she walked in again. Her coat was slick, her hair clinging to her cheek. I was shelving returns, but the moment I saw her, my hands froze around the books. You'll ruin the floor, I said, half joking. She brushed the damp strands from her face, unbothered. Then mop it. I smiled, though my pulse jumped. She crossed the room slowly, stopping so close I caught the faint warmth of her perfume, sandalwood, and something floral that never quite left my clothes after she went. We were alone. Or at least I thought we were. Her hand drifted to the counter, fingertips resting against the wood. I wanted to reach for them. I almost did. But then the bell above the door rang. My friend Jason stumbled in, shaking the rain from his jacket. Damn, man, it's pouring out there. Thought you'd be closed. I stepped back fast, too fast. She noticed. Her posture stiffened, arms crossing, the warmth between us sealed behind her calm expression. Jason glanced between us, curious. Didn't mean to interrupt anything. You didn't, she said quickly, her voice smooth, practiced. But my ears burned. Jason grabbed a book at random and waved it, barely pretending to shop. The tension was unbearable, each second stretched thin. Finally, he muttered something about meeting a date and slipped out again. The door shut. The silence crashed back in. Her eyes found mine, steady, searching. I tried to speak, but nothing came. Later, as I locked the register, she lingered near the shelves. "You should be careful," she said softly. "Careful of what?" "Of people noticing." She traced the edge of a book with her fingertip, not looking at me. "You don't want them misunderstanding." I laughed, nervous, too defensive. "Misunderstanding what?" She turned then, her gaze sharp, the space between us suddenly heavy. "Don't pretend you don't know." I swallowed hard. My chest ached with words I couldn't push out. All I managed was, "Do you care what they think?" Her lips parted, but no answer came. Instead, she stepped closer, close enough that I felt the heat of her body. For a second, either of us breathed. She reached past me, pulling a book from the shelf, her shoulder brushing mine. My heart slammed against my ribs. Her voice was low, almost a whisper. "You're shaking." I laughed, unsteady. "I'm not." "You are." Her hand lingered on the book, but her eyes stayed on me. My body leaned forward before I could stop it. The space between us shrank to nothing. Her breath touched my skin, warm, close enough that if either of us moved a fraction. Her phone buzzed. The sound snapped everything. She stepped back, fumbling in her bag. Her face turned away as she answered, her voice clipped steady. I caught fragments. "Yes, I'm fine. No, just out." When she hung up, she didn't meet my eyes right away. "I should go." I hated the words, hated the distance sliding back into place. But when she reached for the door, I moved without thinking. "Wait." She stopped. I didn't touch her, not quite. But my hand hovered near her arm, close enough that she felt it. Her breath hitched. Slowly, she turned back. The storm rattled the windows, filling the silence we couldn't break. Her eyes softened, but her voice stayed guarded. "This is a mistake." Maybe it was. But she didn't move away. And in that suspended moment, her so close, my pulse racing, the world narrowed to the space between us. The mistake felt like the only thing keeping us alive. It happened on a night the rain wouldn't stop. The storm had swallowed the city whole, streets glistening black, thunder rolling like something ancient and restless. The store was empty, lights humming low. She came in late, her coat soaked through, hair damp and clinging to her jaw. I offered a towel from the break room, flimsy and too small. She took it anyway, dabbing at her face. "Storm caught you?" I asked, trying to sound casual. Her laugh was soft, weary. "Seems like it catches me every time." She draped the towel over the counter and leaned against it, crossing her arms. Her shoulders slumped, not in defeat, but in the exhaustion of someone who's carried too much for too long. I stepped closer without meaning to. "You look." I stopped myself, heat rushing to my face. Her eyebrow arched. "I look what?" "Different," I managed. "Like softer." She studied me, silent. Then she shook her head, half smiling. "You don't know when to stop, do you?" "Maybe not." My voice came lower, steadier. Something shifted in her eyes, not amusement, not dismissal. Something rawer. She moved around the counter, closing the distance until she stood only a breath away. I smelled rain on her coat, the warmth of her skin beneath. My chest tightened. "You have no idea what you're doing," she whispered. "Maybe I do." Her hand lifted, hesitant, then brushed my arm, the lightest touch, enough to set fire under my skin. She froze there, fingers trembling like she wasn't sure whether to hold or retreat. I caught her gaze, desperate to anchor it. "Tell me you don't think about it, too." Her breath hitched, lips parting as if to speak. But instead of words, she reached up, brushing a damp strand of hair from her face, her knuckles grazing my cheek on the way down. The world narrowed. Just her hand, her closeness, the heat between us. "I can't," she whispered finally. "Can't what?" "Can't let this happen." But her body betrayed her. She leaned into me, just enough that I felt her weight, the faint press of her against my chest. My arms ached to wrap around her, to pull her closer. "You already are," I said. Her eyes closed, just for a second. When they opened, they shone with something fierce, longing sharpened by regret. "This isn't fair," she said, almost to herself. "To you. To me. Then stop." My voice shook. "Stop coming here. Stop staying when you could leave." Her lips trembled. She didn't move. I raised a hand, hesitating before brushing her hair back from her face, fingertips grazing her temple. She didn't pull away. Her breath fanned across my neck, warm, unsteady. My heart slammed against my ribs. "Say it," I murmured. "Say you don't want this." She didn't. She couldn't. The storm cracked loud outside, rattling the glass. She flinched, then leaned fully against me, her forehead resting near my shoulder. My arms hovered before instinct took over. I held her, lightly, like she might vanish. Her voice came muffled against me. "You'll regret this." "I won't." The words surprised even me. She lifted her head then, eyes locking onto mine. So close. Too close. Her lips parted, her breath brushing mine. For a moment, nothing existed but the space between us, thinner than paper. And then, the front door rattled, someone tugging at the handle. We broke apart, breathless, hearts pounding. She stared at me, eyes wide, the unspoken hanging heavy in the air. If that door hadn't been locked, everything would have changed. The door rattling that night should have been nothing. Just some stranger caught in the storm, trying a locked handle. But afterward, she pulled away from me so sharply it felt like a blade. For days, she didn't come back. I told myself I'd imagined the whole thing, the brush of her hair against my cheek, the weight of her leaning into me, her breath warm enough to burn. Maybe it was just loneliness twisting itself into a fantasy. But then she appeared again. No coat this time, no storm, just her, standing in the doorway of the bookstore like nothing had happened. I almost dropped the stack of books in my hands. "You're back." She didn't smile. "We need to talk." The words sent a chill down my spine. She walked past me, straight to the far end of the store. I followed, my pulse thundering. She turned sharply, crossing her arms. "Someone saw us the other night." My stomach sank. "Who?" "My neighbor. She was outside when I walked home. Asked why I was out so late, why I looked so." She stopped herself, jaw tight. I stepped closer. "And what did you say?" "That it was nothing. That I couldn't sleep." But she looked at me like she already knew. Her voice cracked on that last word. She tried to hide it by turning away, but I saw her shoulders tremble. I wanted to reach for her, but she stepped back, putting the shelf between us. "You don't understand," she whispered. "I can't be the woman who sneaks around with someone half her age. People talk. They always talk." Her fear stung, but underneath it, I caught something else. Not rejection. Not disgust. Fear of being seen. I forced myself to breathe. "Then why keep coming back?" She blinked, startled. I pressed on. "If you're so worried about what people think, why do you still show up here? Why stand this close to me? Why?" My voice faltered. "Why let me touch you?" Her lips parted, but no words came. I closed the space, slow enough she could stop me. She didn't. My hand hovered near hers on the shelf, not quite touching, but close enough that the warmth of her skin seeped into mine. Her breathing hitched. Her hand trembled, then steadied. "Because I can't stay away," she said finally, voice barely audible. The air between us tightened, pulled taut. My chest ached with the force of it. She tried to move past me, brushing my shoulder as she did. The contact was electric, my whole body leaning toward her before I could stop it. I caught her wrist gently. She froze, eyes wide. "Say you don't want this," I whispered. "Say it, and I'll let go." Her pulse fluttered under my fingers. Her lips trembled. "I should. Should isn't the same as don't." Her eyes met mine then, raw, desperate, full of everything she tried to bury. And still, she shook her head. "You don't know what you're asking." "Then show me," I said. The words slipped out before I could take them back. For a heartbeat, she just stared at me. Then she pulled her wrist free, not roughly, but with a deliberate slowness that made my skin burn where her touch had been. "I can't promise you anything," she whispered. The confession hit harder than any rejection. She wasn't saying no. She wasn't saying yes. She was tearing open the space between us, letting every possibility spill out. Her body shifted as if to leave, but her feet stayed rooted. I stepped closer again, close enough to feel her breath on my chin, to hear the uneven rhythm of her heart. We stood like that, trembling, waiting for the next crack in the dam. And then she made a choice, subtle, but unmistakable. She didn't leave. She stayed. The bookstore had never felt smaller. Every aisle, every shadow seemed to press us together, even as we tried to stand apart. She hovered by the poetry shelf, arms crossed, chin dipped like she could hide from me if she stayed still enough. But her breathing betrayed her, uneven, shallow, a rhythm that matched my own. I moved closer step by step, until the space between us was thin enough that I could feel the heat radiating from her body. "You should leave," she whispered. "You're the one who came here." Her eyes flicked up sharp, then softened. She swallowed hard. "I shouldn't have." "Then why did you?" Silence. Her hand gripped the edge of the shelf like it was the only thing anchoring her. I wanted to pull it away, to see what happened if she stopped holding on. "I told you," she said finally, her voice breaking. "I can't stay away." That was it, the last crack in the wall. I reached up slowly, brushing a stray strand of hair from her cheek. My fingers lingered, tracing the damp edge of her temple. She didn't flinch. Her eyes closed, just for a moment, like she'd been waiting for it. When they opened, her gaze locked onto mine, wide and unguarded. "This is wrong," she breathed. "Then stop me." My voice was low, raw, trembling with everything I'd buried for weeks. Her lips parted. No words. Just air, warm against my mouth, close enough to taste the promise of her. I leaned in, slow, deliberate, giving her every chance to pull away. She didn't. Her forehead touched mine, the smallest surrender, and my whole body shuddered. She pressed her palm to my chest, not pushing, not pulling, just resting there, feeling the frantic beat beneath. "You scare me," she whispered. "Why?" "Because you make me feel." Her throat tightened. "Like I still have something left to lose." Her honesty nearly undid me. I caught her hand against my chest, holding it there. "Then let me be worth it." The words landed heavy, but they didn't scare her off. If anything, her body shifted closer, until her shoulder brushed mine, her hip against me, nothing accidental anymore. For a long, suspended breath, we stood like that. Her hand trembling in mine, her breath against my lips, her eyes searching mine as if the answer had always been there. And then, finally, the choice. She leaned in. Her mouth brushed mine, soft, tentative, not a kiss yet, but something that carried the weight of every night, every silence, every almost that came before. I exhaled, a sound caught between relief and ache. She tilted her head, just enough, and this time her lips met mine fully. It wasn't smooth. It wasn't polished. It was messy, uneven, raw, teeth grazing, breath catching, the kind of kiss you don't plan, only survive. When we broke apart, both of us were trembling. She rested her forehead against mine again, eyes closed. "God help me," she whispered. "I can't fight this anymore." I held her tighter, my own voice rough. "Then don't." The storm outside had eased. The world was quiet again, but it wasn't the silence she'd once described, not the kind that echoed with loneliness. This silence was full. Charged. Alive. And in it, for the first time, I understood her fully, and she me. We had crossed the line. There was no going back. After the storm broke, the bookstore was quiet again. The air smelled faintly of rain and old paper, and for once, I didn't feel like the silence was heavy. She was still close, her forehead resting against mine, our breaths mingling in the narrow space between us. Neither of us spoke at first. Words felt fragile, like they might ruin what had just happened. Finally, she whispered, "We can't pretend this didn't happen. I don't want to." Her lips pressed together, uncertain. I could see the war inside her, all the fears, the rules, the voices that had kept her holding back. So I eased her hand into mine, threading our fingers together. Her palm was warm, a little shaky, but she didn't pull away. "You're worried about the age gap," I said quietly. She laughed, soft and self-conscious. "Worried is one word for it." I squeezed her hand. "I don't care what anyone thinks. Do you?" Her eyes flicked up to mine, wide and searching. "I've cared for so long. About appearances, about judgment. About doing the right thing, even when it left me alone." She exhaled, a long, trembling breath. "But when I'm here with you, I don't feel any of that." Her admission hit me harder than the kiss itself. I brushed my thumb across her knuckles, grounding her. "Then let's stop fighting it." She leaned closer, not for another kiss this time, but for something gentler, resting her head against my shoulder. My chest rose and fell beneath her weight, and it felt like the most natural thing in the world. We didn't rush. We didn't need to. She sat on the counter while I leaned against it beside her, our shoulders touching, our hands still linked. The rain had faded into a quiet drizzle outside, and the hum of the ceiling lights was the only sound around us. "I spent years convincing myself I didn't need anyone," she said softly. "That being alone was easier. Was it?" She shook her head, a faint smile tugging at her lips. "Not really." I kissed the top of her head, light, almost shy. She didn't flinch. If anything, she sank into me, like she'd been waiting for someone to hold her without asking for anything in return. For the first time, the weight between us wasn't about guilt or hesitation. It was about comfort. Belonging. She looked up at me, her hand tightening around mine. "You scare me less now." "Why?" "Because I finally believe you when you say you know what you want." I smiled, leaning my forehead against hers again. "I've never been more sure of anything." Her lips brushed mine once more, slower this time, steady, not desperate. Just confirmation. When she pulled back, she laughed quietly, the sound low and unguarded. "You really are still too young for me." "Maybe," I said, grinning. "But tonight you didn't seem to mind." She shook her head, but she was smiling too. And in that moment, the years between us didn't matter. What mattered was that she stayed. That she chose me. So we sat there, side by side in the quiet little bookstore, hands entwined, sharing the kind of silence she once told me she hated. But now, together, it didn't feel empty at all. It felt full. Alive. Ours.